What's going on, everyone? It's Adam and Craig with Grandstand Golf. This is our DFS Tiers picks and pivots for the 2021 PGA Championship. DFS Tiers is a new thing to DraftKings. So a quick overview, Craig. It's very similar, to your office pool. You got golfers in pool A, golfers in pool B, and then you select one or two from that. That's kind of what it is here. There's contests up to 9,000 people, some pretty good payouts. But basic strategy is, how do we find, some guys are going to be super popular, some guys aren't. How do we find some pivots? So what's kind of your strategies for DFS Tiers?
Well, I mean, first off, this is basically the first type of fantasy golf we ever played.
Totally, yeah.
Back when it was on pen and paper and you'd pick guys. And I remember at that point, you weren't allowed to take Tiger. Essentially, everyone was assumed to have Tiger because he was just so...
Is this back in the maintenance?
Yeah. Back when we worked on the maintenance crew, everyone was just assumed to have Tiger because otherwise everyone's going to take him. It's just a waste. So, no, my strategies, I mean, I find these a little bit tough. You can't just take all... They do a decent job of making the tiers, I think, where it's not... There's not just like one clear guy. So I think you do kind of want to mix up the obvious, if there is an obvious one, the obvious ones with, you have to have some pivots in there. So, the pivots might just be your second best guy, or it might be someone who you think very, very few people will click on this person, but I think his upside is higher than that.
Exactly. So we have 6 tiers. We're going to go through each of them, talk about favorite, talk about a pivot. Let's jump into tier 1 here, the tournament favorite.
Yep.
So our tournament favorite here is JT, Rahm, Spieth, and Rory. So what are you doing here, Craig?
So I have a pick and a pivot, and to me, essentially, like we've got our snake video coming, where we'll rank essentially our first rounds, and I have these guys 1A and 1B. So call it a pivot or not, but I have Rory McIlroy as my pick and Jon Rahm as my pivot. I just think Rory, I put him as my pick because I think he will be a little bit more popular. There's the narrative of him as the defending champ here, but I like both those guys a lot.
Yeah, I would say there's not really a pivot in this area. Just pick the guy you like the most. But for me, that's Rahm. My pivot would put you Spieth, and just kind of move on. Yeah, pick your favorite guy here.
Yeah, and like quite obviously, Justin Thomas is not worth taking from either of us. What?
clearly, yeah, that's the one to pick.
Yeah,
apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, tier 2 is called Bomber. We've got Xander, Bryson, Victor Hovland, Dustin Johnson, and Brooks. So what are you doing here in tier 2?
So I have, this one again. I feel like either my pick or my pivot. So I have Xander as my pick and Victor Hovland as my pivot. Victor Hovland might end up being the most popular guy in this, despite the fact that he's probably, I'd have to look at the betting odds, maybe outside of Brooks, he might be the longest shot here.
I think that's right, yeah.
But so I call him a pivot, but I just think that's because he's a little bit lesser known until you get into the niche DFS communities.
Yeah, so I also went Hovland as a pivot because he's not my pick just because he's too popular. So the guy I really liked, he's on our DFS pick show. I picked Dustin Johnson up top, so I'm going with the kind of the stud I like in this range, and then the other tiers I'll get a little bit weirder, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could make a good argument that DJ and Bryson are the kind of the cream of this tier, and then everyone else is everyone else there's pretty good.
They're all still pretty good. Okay,
Yeah.
Tier 3 is ball striker. We've got Zalatoris, Berger, Webb, Colin Morikawa, Patrick Reed, and Hideki here. So we get a little bit more names. It's a little bit more interesting, some variants here. So what are you doing here?
Well, so I almost left Colin Morikawa off completely, but I ended up with him as my pick. I don't know if I like Colin Morikawa as the safest top 10, but I think the reality in the ball striker tier is his iron play is so good that if his putting is good, and when his putting is good, oftentimes it's great. So when he shows up with a hot putter, he can win. And so that's where I feel like in this type of DFS thing, the win potential, bumps him up there for me. And then I have Berger. I just think Berger is so solid in every aspect of his game. We saw him, with the, I guess, rounds 2 through 4 charge last week to work his way into, I think, tied for second or tied for third?
I think T3.
Tied for third,
yeah.
Right. So I just think his game's in a really good place.
Yeah, I think Berger would be the most popular here. Seems to be getting a lot of chatter in the fantasy golf DFS community. But I still really like him. He's my highest owned guy, I think, in just tournament long DFS here. But I think this is a place I'll pivot because I've gone pretty chalky with my first two. I think I'll pivot to Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed, I think scrambling is going to be important here. And we know Patrick Reed is one of the best around the green guys. When every approach shot is 200 yards out, not everybody's going to be hitting the green. So you need to be able to go up and down. I kind of feel like Patrick Reed is the first pivot that if I'm making one lineup in tiers, I think I'm going to throw Patrick Reed in here and hope that a lot of people go elsewhere.
Yeah, I do. The other thing about Patrick Reed, I think we mentioned briefly on our first thoughts, best thoughts DFS preview. He plays well in long, difficult courses. He doesn't need to be, the stat fit. It doesn't make sense sometimes when he comes out and wins, and it's just because he has that Spieth-like magic around the greens.
And he can ground his club in every bunker. There's no bunkers. It's all.
Although does that even the playing field? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay, tier 4 is short gamer. We got Cameron Smith, Tony Finau, Hatton, Sungjae, Patrick Cantlay, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Looks like we got the same picks here, Craig. So what are you doing with this tier?
Yeah, well, I think you made a pretty compelling argument. Tony Finau is one of your DFS picks for the week. You planted your flag on that one. I think you make a pretty compelling argument. I forgot what you said, but it was something like 10 of the last 10 majors he was in the top 10. That wasn't actually it, but
I think 8 of 12.
8 of 12. I was close. I was close. Yeah, so I think he is someone that gets a lot of flack for a lot of unnecessary reasons, but when it comes to playing these tests of golf that test every aspect of your golf game, he seems to do pretty well consistently.
Yeah, and I think there's a pretty interesting quote that came out. We're recording this on Tuesday before the tournament. He basically said, there's not many guys that come in here with the mentality that like they honestly think they can win. And I have that mentality, which is interesting that he does with his lack of wins on his resume, but I still like him having that mentality.
Yeah, or it's just the sports psychologists are telling him this is the mentality you need to have, so he's faking it till he makes it.
Yeah, totally. But my pivot here, I'm going Patrick Cantlay, and this is one that, Sunday, Monday, I wasn't sure if I was going to play at all, but I've just kind of convinced myself that I think I'm going to be where I'm going to get weird this week is a really low-owned Patrick Cantlay, whose price has got adjusted because of his many missed cuts coming in. But I still believe in the talent, and I think a quick putter change or fix or whatever it could be all he needs. And if he's going to be, even in this group, a sub 10%, sub 7%, that allows me to do a lot of different stuff in the tiers. And I just can plug him in here and hope that he kind of turns it around.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things I heard this week, and it was from Max Homa's podcast, but he was talking about his prep before the Masters, and he played some practice rounds with Cantlay, and he said no one was playing better. He didn't need to see anyone else play golf to know that there was no one in the world playing better golf. Just the way I think he played 9 holes, and he was like, he just was making birdies on an absolute tear. And then he goes out and misses the cut. And essentially Homa's point was that, like, for professional golfers, they don't necessarily know what their game is going to be that morning when they get to the range. And so, like, we have seen Cantlay miss some cuts, but it's not like he's, I think we forget that he's in this tier of guys that he can show up there with his game and he can win this tournament even if other people are playing well.
And cuts can be super finicky, a couple missed putts that burn the edge, or you kind of get in like Zalatoris did last week and then move your way into a top 20. Like if you make the cut, you can do a lot of noise on the weekend just by making that slim margin of a cut.
Yeah, for sure. My pivot here, Cameron Smith. I think he might actually be more popular than I see more and more chatter out there all the time. So I wouldn't necessarily like him if he ends up being the most popular play in this one, because I do think he's similar to Reed, where I think he plays long, difficult courses well. He's got that magical short game, but I don't know if he's not the ball striker that a Finau or a Hatton or a Cantlay are, so he doesn't necessarily have the safest floor, maybe.
It's an interesting list because I honestly could convince myself into any one of them, even at tier 4. But plant your flag, move on. Tier 5. Birdie makers, we got Answer, Corey Connors, Sam Burns, Louis Oosthuizen, Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, and Justin Rose. Again, a couple more names here. So what are you doing tier 5?
So I really like Abe Answer. He was one of my picks for DFS. I'm sticking with it, even though he's with some guys who are priced higher than him, for the tournament long pricing. I think his game's in a really good place, so maybe he's safe, maybe not, but I think that I think his ball striking's in a great spot. I think he should play well this week.
For me, I'm going Tommy Fleetwood. I don't really have stats with me, and I'll have them ready for our live show, but I just really like Tommy Fleetwood in this range. I think The course fits him pretty well. He has been playing better. So I kind of like Tommy Fleetwood here, but my pivot, which I might consider here, there's a few names I consider. Scotty Scheffler, Louis Oosthuizen, I think are interesting, but Corey Connors still is playing remarkable golf, like punching way above his weight. I think we were saying in the last 6 months, strokes gained total, he's still in the top 10, I think, in the field. So he's playing unbelievable golf, and I don't see that suddenly coming to a screeching halt anytime soon. So Corey Connors is also interesting to me.
Yeah, like Connors a lot. I have Louis Oosthuizen as my pivot. There's you don't need to look at stats when it comes to Louis. He just, for some reason, whatever. It's tough to anticipate what you're going to get from Louis, because sometimes he just makes the game look so easy in all facets, and other times you're like, man, I really would expected more from Louis this week. But It doesn't matter if it's a major. I think that a hard course, a potential, even if it's not windy, blowing crazy hard, I think that a little bit of kind of constant sea breeze, I don't think that's going to phase him at all. We've seen him win an Open Championship. I think he's going to be competitive.
Yeah, I like Louis. Our sixth and final tier is our long shots, quote unquote long shots. I don't know if we can call these guys long shots, though. Honestly,
they're middle shots, I would say.
They're middle shots, exactly. Casey Scott, Sergio, Lowry, Jason Day, and Gary Woodland. That's interesting names for sure. So what are you doing here, Craig?
So I like Niemann. I think Niemann has big upside. So that's why I have him as my pick here. I think he's probably more volatile than a lot of the other guys, but his ball striking is so good. He can get so streaky hot in all facets of the game. So yeah, I like him.
For me, I really don't know if I'm going anywhere else except for Paul Casey. And Paul Casey, the more stats I look into, I'm like, why? Paul Casey can't fail here, which means he's probably going to fail for me. But like everything is so great with Paul Casey. He's got a win this year in Europe. His strokes gained total again is I think like 5th or 6th we were talking about in our pick show. Paul Casey, he probably is going to be the chalkiest one in this group. But if I go weird, tiers 3, 4, 5, I feel like I just can slot in Paul Casey here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would, if I was picking, my 1A and 1B, it would be Niemann and Casey. But I put Shane Lowry down as my pivot here because if I feel like I've been very basic and very straightforward with a lot of my picks, I think Shane Lowry is going to have very, very low ownership at that tier. And I think, that's a little bit people sleeping on him. He's still the reigning Open champion. Still reigning Open still reigning, yeah. So I think that, he's unfazed by a major. We have seen some form from him over the last few months. So I think he is a good low ownership pivot in this one.
Yeah, and we'll talk about these guys in our live DFS show, but there's not a lot I'm playing here, but Adam Scott would be one that I would consider pivoting to just because I think he's getting up for majors. He's not playing a ton of events on his schedule, but I feel like he can handle this test. That is Kiawah.
Yep, for sure.
That's our tiers talk. Just a reminder, our live DFS show is on Tuesday night. That is Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is. The 18th before the PGA Championship. It's the Tuesday before. Not Wednesday. It's Tuesday night, 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss that. Good luck this week, and catch our upcoming shows.
Yep. Good luck. I'll see you next time.